Hi there guys, this is Jared with Wildland Woodworks, and today we're going to be turning this piece of elm right here. And right now I'm trying to make sure that the center that I had marked previously is the center that I still want to keep. And in hindsight of turning this bowl, I probably should have turned it around to be able to, this right here is the crotch of the elm tree, and I was trying to get more of that really cool crotch pattern to show up. But I probably should have turned the blank around to get more of it to show up, but it would have resulted in a smaller bowl. So I kind of rolled the dice, try to make a little bit bigger bowl, and maybe be able to make sure that crotch pattern can come through. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit on the lathe, so I'm going to have to take it off right quick and trim it down. Taking it over to the bandsaw, giving it just a little bit of a trim. So right now I'm pretty close to maxing it out. It wasn't a full, I got a 16-inch swing on the lathe, but it won't be a 16-inch bowl for sure. So now I'm sharpening, make sure we get started off correctly, and try to get it up to speed. I like to go as fast as I can go, with, of course, without it throwing the lathe into complete chaos. And how I like to start, of course, you want to true up the bottom, but I immediately, before I really start shaping the bowl, is to form the tenon on it. And I like to do that just in case something goes wrong, the bowl blank flies off. You can still, you have that tenon ready to go, and you can just turn it around and put it onto the chuck and keep going. I've had too many projects that I lost not doing it that way. And I mean, you could still fix it. It just takes a lot longer to be able to make it right and to get it back on track. So there we are, finally forming that tenon. And you could probably tell I swapped out my bowl gouges. That one's the smaller, sharper angle. That one's about 45, and then I went back just now to this 55-degree angle. I like to be able to have different angles on the bowl gouges to be able to perform different tasks. So here I am shaping the outside of the bowl after we got the tenon ready. And now I need to get that shoulder of the tenon flat. And so I'm marking off that shoulder to make sure that it's going to sit just right in that chuck. I decided I want to reshape the bowl a little bit once I've outlined where I want the shoulder to sit. I'm trimming down that bottom just a bit. So now we're ready to go and turn it around, mount it up on the chuck, and we'll begin the finishing process. Well, not the finishing, but hollowing out the center. And so I normally will wait until I have the bowl mounted back on the chuck like this to do the finishing cuts on the outside of the bowl, because when you turn it around onto the chuck, you will normally have a little bit of a wobble, and you can kind of see it right there. And so yeah, so do the finishing cuts on the outside. I of course sharpen it on my grinder, and then you just saw me stropping. And now we're taking the final finishing cuts. These are going to be really slow, really light cuts to try to get a nice, really nice tool finish. that just reduces the amount of scraping or sanding. I don't really do a lot of scraping. I probably should. So there I'm defining where I want the edge of the bowl first, and then now we're going to true up the face, and then we're going to start really digging in. And I like to keep the tailstock on these bigger pieces pushed up against the bowl until I just can't get my gouge in there anymore. And that just a piece of security. I don't like working on a piece for 2 or 3 hours and it something happen, I catch a knot and the bowl goes flying, which doesn't happen. The longer you do it, the more experience you have, the less it happens. But I just like to have that added piece of security just in case something happens. Now we're taking out that little center. So once I take out that center, I like to then see how far I need to go. I like to leave the thickness at the bottom to be about a half an inch to actually be a usable serving bowl. And so you could go thinner if you'd like. Half inch is just the right amount of heft and thinness for my particular style. You could definitely go thinner. So now I'm just trying to check to see where I'm at and how much further I can go without using some calipers. So now I'm digging in, trying to get to the right depth here. And this is some of the first time I've ever turned some elm. I got this from one of my students in Nashville. I've never turned elm before. And it's always surprising to me. I don't know why it's surprising, but it is how different every single tree turns. And so because of that, the elm, I got a lot of tear out right there on the end grain. And so I'm trying to raise the grain right there. And then, of course, I'm going to resharpen the tools, get them really sharp, and then try to be able to fix that tear out without going to sanding. So I'm getting the grain raised up, got my tool, my gouge all sharp, and now we're going to take some more really slow finishing cuts. And so when you're doing your finishing cuts, you want to go very, very slow. You want to take very light cuts. And you normally want your RPM to be a little bit on the higher side, especially if you want to get that really nice tool finish. And I still had to do a little bit of aggressive sanding right there on the end grain. That's some 60 grit. And we're going to go with the sanding all the way up to, so I'm just checking for trouble spots right there. And I went all the way up to 120, and then now we're going to raise the grain. And then once it dries out completely, I then sanded all the way up to I think it was 320. It was either 320 or 400. Pretty sure it was 320 on this bowl. And yeah, so we got that. The grain is raised, and we just kind of skipped over the sanding all the way to 320 because it's pretty repetitive. And now I am buffing, got the buffing compound on the little bowl buff on the lathe, and we're just putting that final shine after the sanding on it. And once we're done with the buffing, I then break out the walnut oil and give it a nice coating. What are you saying that good? And so, like I said, see that crotch green pattern that's really traditional didn't really come through. Like I said, I should have probably turned around to be able to get that green pattern a little more, but it still turned out pretty nicely. Thanks for watching, guys.